Welcome to episode 171 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm the host, Kim Newlove. Today's episode is part of my Back to School series, which features interviews with 9 pharmacists who teach online courses. Up next is Dr. Kelley Carlstrom, also known as KelleyCPharmD. During our conversation, we talk about her Enjoy Learning Oncology, or ELO, programs. You can find them at KelleyCPharmD.com. That's KelleyCPharmD.com. A link to that is in the show notes, which you can find on the pharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 171. Thanks for tuning in today. And now, here's my conversation with Dr. Kelley Carlstrom. Hi, Kelley. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I am fabulous, Kim. Thanks so much for having me here.
My pleasure. We've known each other for a few years, haven't we?
We have, yes, back at one of the first Medipreneurs I went to, we met at.
Yes, absolutely. And that was a joy to meet you. And I see you pop up at these meetings every year that I've attended. So, yeah, it's great to keep our relationship going. And thank you for being on the podcast today to talk about your online course. But first, for anybody who has not met you, could you please give a brief introduction and talk about what you do and what you offer?
I would love to. Yes, my name is Kelley Carlstrom. I am an oncology pharmacist by training, and I got in that path through the very traditional route of postgraduate residency training. I was in clinical practice for several years, mostly in bone marrow transplant, which is a hyper specialized niche of oncology, rare treatment of rare cancers. And I actually got recruited into a non traditional role. I wasn't really expecting to leave direct patient care, but what happened is that kind of opened up a whole view of what a pharmacist can do and led me down a couple different paths, one of which is my training program, my oncology pharmacy training program that we're going to talk about today.
Great. Thanks for the intro. And let's get right into it. What's the name of your oncology training program and where can people find it?
So you can find more information about the program and me at KelleyCPharmD.com. So that's Kelley with an EY here. And my training program, there are 3 different tiers to it. So one is called the ELO certificate, which is the highest tier. Then below that is the ELO collaborative. And then the lowest tier is called ELO blueprint. And ELO, for those wondering what the heck is ELO, ELO, it stands for Enjoy Learning Oncology, because learning oncology should not be difficult. So we can get into the nuances between those different tiers, but the basic foundation of all 3 of those tiers is an online oncology pharmacy training course.
Okay. YOLO, so ELO, right? You only live once, so enjoy learning oncology.
Yes.
I just had to say that. No, it just reminds me of YOLO. So I just had to put that in there. I like that. I like that. People who learn from you should enjoy learning oncology. And if they don't, well, perhaps they need to choose something else, right?
Yes, oncology is very intimidating. It's scary to a lot of pharmacists, rightly so. It's complicated, it's always changing. But that's also why it's so much fun and keeps you on your toes and is great for job security because there's always something new coming out in oncology. And I think that it is an enjoyable specialty once you get over that initial kind of learning curve that you have to hike up that mountain. There is
Mhm.
enjoyment to be able to be had on this journey.
I'll take your word for it. Oncology is not my thing, but how do you students find you? How do your students find you? Because not everybody's interested in oncology. Are these people who are just exploring opportunities, or are these usually people who are pretty serious about entering oncology as their profession?
People find me 2 different ways. One is through LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn and have been for years. So, and I post a lot of content on LinkedIn, oncology related content. So people definitely follow me on there. They might see me from other people in their network that follow me. So I definitely got to get a lot of connections through LinkedIn. But people also find me on Google. So when you search oncology pharmacy or oncology training program, I'm often on the first page of Google. And usually people that are searching Google for it are pharmacists that are working in oncology today in some capacity. did not get there through the traditional route of residency training, so had an opportunity to work in oncology, kind of raised their hand and said, I'm in, I'll self-learn it, and are now on that self-learning path, how to learn oncology. That's what they're searching for when they come across my program. And that's who I created this program for. So years ago, when I was still in practice, I was working at a smaller community hospital before I got recruited into non-traditional work. And it really kind of opened my eyes to how the vast majority of cancer centers operate in this country. So I trained in academia. I worked in academia for a while. And then I worked in this community setting. And it really just opened my eyes because the vast majority of cancer is treated in community centers across this country. So smaller practices. And I was at a pretty tiny one. I had two physicians and I was the only pharmacist. So I was doing all the things. I was doing the order verification, the product verification. Thankfully, I had a rock star technician that really did a lot of the heavy lifting with the product. I did all the clinical questions, all the patient education as one pharmacist with two physicians. So I learned a lot about now who my clients are. They're typically pharmacists like that are working in smaller cancer centers and that need additional support learning the material because there is so much in oncology and trying to learn those foundational skills, trying to learn where all the information lives, how to navigate the information that's out there. Those are the things that triggered me to create this program because people were reaching out and asking questions. The number one question I would get on LinkedIn is, hey, Kelley, I'm new to oncology. Can you point me to a YouTube video? I would say, there's about 4,000. One YouTube video is not going to cut it. And so I got the same question over and over again. And that's what led to the creation of this program.
Congratulations on your success in creating this program. It's answering a need is what you've done, really. And I feel like you and I have something in common. We both recognize that there's misinformation out there, or there's not exactly the best information on YouTube. The first video you look at is not necessarily the best video. So, what you're doing is, I love your word that you've used in a different podcast episode with Mike Kelzer. You curate the information. Can you talk about the value of curating the information when it comes to oncology pharmacy?
Yes, my whole program is founded on this curation principle, and that's because there is so much great information out there, but it lives in all various places. So there are lots of great websites, but there is misinformation out there as well. So balancing where is the best information, but also where is the best information that comes in different formats. Because as anyone who's tried to learn oncology, myself included, sometimes it can be kind of boring when you're reading really dense scientific literature or really complicated drug mechanism and studies and it can be kind of boring. So what I want to do is make this somewhat interactive and give access to different types of content that is out there. So whether that is different types of websites, YouTube videos, podcasts are a great one. There's lots of great podcasts out there about oncology specific topics. Sometimes there are calculators online, there are PDF downloads, there's PowerPoint slide decks that are shared online. So there's tons of great information. I didn't want to provide just text, boring to a PDF of text to read, wanted it to be more interactive. And that's something that my clients have told me that they appreciate is all the content isn't the same. So it keeps them engaged, but it also shows them where the reputable resources are so they could go back and visit those in the future.
Kelley Carlstrom, I like how you roll. I do. I That's what everybody wants when they're learning something. They want to cut the learning curve.
Mhm.
They don't want to have to look at these articles that are necessarily off topic, maybe a little bit, a one off, and you don't find out until halfway through reading it or watching the YouTube video or listening to it. You cherry pick everything, don't you?
Yes, I cherry pick me and my experts. So it's not just me that does this. I hire other expert oncology pharmacists to support this program because, as you can imagine, oncology changes practically every week around here. And it's really difficult to keep up with all of this. So, as I was designing the program, I thought about that. How can I make sure that my clients have access to the most up to date information? And how I do that is I find through my network all of the really smart, smarter than me, oncology pharmacists out there that are in direct patient care roles. So, they're taking care of these patients in these diseases every day, they're in the thick of it. And I hire them to review my content, make sure everything's up to date. They also bring in new content. So when they come across a new YouTube video or a new podcast, they bring that to me and say, this would be a great resource for a pharmacist. And then in addition, which we can get into a little bit more, is they support my program by being a resource for my clients as they have questions as they go through the content. But I'm definitely leveraging their knowledge, their experience, their filter, if you will, to go through all of this content and have them help me do that cherry picking.
I didn't realize that you have a team. So go team and congratulations to you and your team.
Yes, it's pretty large, Kim. I never expected to have this many contractors, but on any given time, I have 24 contractors because I have 24 lessons in my program.
Wow. Hey, you know what? That's almost like having everything peer reviewed. Having everything peer reviewed adds value.
Yes, absolutely. Again, these are the expert pharmacists. And I'll tell you what's interesting too is when we have our support calls, we have a monthly call, and three of these experts get on a call and they learn from each other too, because every institution does things a little bit differently. So it's really valuable to hear from people on the front line how they actually practice, because there's not one right way to do most things in oncology.
That's an abundance mindset that you have there. I like that because when you recognize that there's more than one way to do things and we can all learn from one another, that's even more value. So that's great. That's great.
It's a really important lesson for my clients to learn. I think pharmacists new to oncology come in and think that there's this kind of black and white regimen they need to learn. They just need to memorize this and this. But it's not. And actually, I think that's what makes oncology and really most of healthcare so unique and such a great kind of area to work in, because there's a lot of room for clinical judgment, for expertise. And I constantly remind my clients that oncology is a big gray area. There are lots of ways to do things. It's what you're learning is the foundational concepts, and then working through the clinical decision making by having conversations with people who have seen these patients and pulling out those nuggets, those nuances. Why would you do something for this particular patient and do something different in another patient? There's lots to be learned, knowing that there's a lot of gray versus kind of exact right and wrong or black and white.
I'm so glad you brought that up because so many pharmacists are like that. They're very, what is the word? They're very binary. You know, it's
Hmm.
either right or it's wrong, it's black or it's white. But when you talk about there being gray, I think that helps people with their mindset, and helping people with mindset is very important when they're learning something new, because if you set the expectation that there is gray area and you can operate in it, they're going to have a better impact on their patients.
I completely agree.
Awesome. Well, you talked about having 24 different sections. Can you talk a little bit about what they are? Because you said that they're more engaging than just reading. So, what are they like?
Yes. So all of my programs have this foundation of this online course, which includes 24 weekly lessons. So I have a schedule that all of these lessons are built out on, and I have it scheduled where it's 3 weeks of lesson content in a row, followed by a week off. And this is because oncology is hard and we all need a break. So
Sure.
it's not like full throttle all the time. Although if that's your jam and you want to bust through lots of information, have at it. You have access to all of the course content when you enroll. But what I'm trying to do is provide structure, because this is where a lot of people get lost in oncology. They get lost in the vacuum of information and just the overwhelm of, man, there's so much. How am I going to get through it? So I've structured it in a couple different ways. One is through the calendar. So 3 weeks of content in a row, followed by a week off. But also in the weekly content, I've structured it in a way that my brain, how my brain works is pretty much how I scheduled it. So what it looks like inside is each day of the week, I tell you information to consume. So literally when you sign into the course, it says on Monday, do this. It gives you websites to visit or videos to watch or podcasts to read or listen to. And then Tuesday, do this. Wednesday, do this. I literally compartmentalized every day. And the goal being 30 to 60 minutes a day to consume the content that's in there. Now, that varies a little bit depending on the lesson. So, for example, testicular cancer, there's not as much information, so you can kind of get through that faster. Breast cancer, which we have coming up here soon, is a beast of a topic. And so that one's going to take a little bit longer to get through. But the goal is to help you compartmentalize how to section off your week. Everybody's working a job, they probably have kids to take care of, they have to go to the grocery store and do laundry. How do you fit in learning something like this into your regular life? Well, you need to compartmentalize it and have a sectioned off chunk of information to consume.
Would you say that 1 hour with your course equals the amount of time that they're actually going to spend? Because it sounds like the course is 24 courses long. So you've got the 4 week chunks, right? 3 weeks you're learning, 1 week you're off, rinse and repeat times 8. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. There. All right. Kim Newlove can do math. All right. But when they have these weeks, you're saying that Monday through Friday, for example, you've got 30 to 60 minutes of a lesson for them to consume. Is that you talking to them for 30 minutes, or is the expectation that the article that you're assigning will take them 30 minutes to read, or the podcast that you're assigning will take 60 minutes to listen to?
It's the latter, that one. And so the content throughout the week is actually Monday through Saturday, and it's not me presenting slides. There's no video. There is some video of me in this ELO Basics course that is part of the program, but in the main foundation, these 24 weeks, it's not me presenting anything. So the time commitment is you going to this website and reviewing it, you watching this YouTube video, you listening to this podcast.
Okay, got it. Well, hey, that helps anybody listening understand how this could be right for them and whether it will fit into their life or not. Because I think we all know that it's a huge time commitment to buy an online course and then actually do the dang thing, right?
Yes, getting through it is really important. And I think my program is long. So the whole program is 8 months to get through to kind of follow the schedule to get through all of the lessons. Now, with that said, life happens, things come up and people get behind. But what's helpful is that each week in my program is a silo. So if you are kind of bogged down by something that happens and you can't get through a particular lesson that week, you just drop it and you start back up the following Monday with the next lesson. And you can come back to that one maybe on one of those off weeks or at the end of the program, because the content takes 8 months, but I sell the program in a year membership. So you have an extra 4 months at the back end to kind of go back, review anything, revisit those ones you had to drop.
Okay, I'm starting to get the whole picture here. They have 8 months worth of content if they go from beginning to end in a typical fashion. And you have the 3 different courses. And you're saying that for the all 3 courses combined, that's 8 months, right?
Well, there's 3 tiers of this program, but all of the 3 tiers get this online course. The online course is called ELO Blueprint. So that's the foundational course that's across all 3 tiers. When you just purchase ELO Blueprint, that's essentially the DIY path, the do-it-yourself path. You get access to the course content, you get access to the course schedule. I'll send you automated emails every Monday telling you what lesson is on deck for that week to kind of keep you accountable to staying on schedule. But you go through the content at your own pace. The tier above that, called ELO Collaborative, has that same foundation course with the emails, with the schedule. But what you also get is support as you go through that journey. And support looks like a couple things. It looks like a community platform on something called Slack, which is a messaging platform. And you can message me directly. You can interact with your peers in the program. And the biggest bang for your buck, if you will, is to engage with our experts. So every week that our lesson goes live, one of our experts is in the Slack community answering questions. So as we're recording this, we're wrapping up our gynecologic cancer week, and we've had a couple of great questions in our Slack community for our expert, who's Brittany Brown at University of Rhode Island, and she's been answering questions as people go through the content. So that's one way they get support. But the other way, which is my favorite, every month we get on a live Zoom call with the 3 experts that are in that month. So the one coming up in a couple of weeks will be our testicular cancer expert, our gyn cancer, and our breast cancer. So all 3 experts will show up on a Zoom call. And there's a loose agenda I put together based on questions clients have asked me, what I know comes up again and again. But really, it's driven by my clients. What do they want to know? They're there to pick the brain of these experts. So they ask really great questions. We talk about really important, impactful pieces of information. And I'll actually share a nugget with you that I just love this story so much. A couple months ago, I had a new client who had just joined when we had a live call on acute leukemias. It was acute leukemias, aggressive lymphomas, and bone marrow transplant call. And she had just joined, so she hadn't gone through the course content yet. She just kind of popped into the live call. And we talked about APL, acute promyelocytic leukemia. This is an oncologic emergency when this potential diagnosis comes into a hospital. Patients can die very quickly if they don't get the right treatment. And they often show up in weird healthcare ways on like Friday at 7 o'clock at night when all the regular people have gone home. It's just how it happens at every hospital. And we talked about it on this call, and our expert, Bernie Marini at the University of Michigan, was explaining what you do when you have a suspected APL patient, all the steps. And my brand new client had this patient the following week. She messaged me in Slack as soon as it happened. She said, we had a suspected APL come in. I knew exactly what to do. I confidently chatted with the oncologist about what steps we needed to do, and the patient was diagnosed the next day. And she literally had such an impact on that patient's life coming into a smaller community hospital with APL. So that's the kind of impact you can have when you're talking with expert pharmacists who see this stuff every day, and when you're there to learn from them.
Wow, that is a heck of a story. Without all that collaboration, yeah, you're right. She would not have had the opportunity to hear that story and be able to head off that emergency.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean, you
that
can
patient
learn.
might have been suffering for days.
Yeah, you can learn a lot of information by reading, but in my experience, I learn a lot more by talking, by discussing, by hearing patient cases, by hearing examples and patient stories and other people's perspective. And I think a lot of other pharmacists learn that way too, which is why I've structured the program this way.
Yes, patient cases are always one of my favorite things in continuing education because it's an application of knowledge. You know, you get to see the patient with all of their symptoms and what is their med list prior to an intervention, and then you get to make the intervention and show how their meds have changed, or I don't know if oncology is as black and white as what I'm explaining, but I don't know about you, but whenever I do a CE, those are what really speak to me. So I love hearing that in your collaboration option, you have that collaboration piece.
Yes, we do have that piece. And there is also within the course content, I also have written cases as well. So in each lesson, there's a blank patient case that you can work through, and then there's an answer key. So even if you're on the DIY path, you can still get access to some patient case examples.
Well, it sounds like you have the DIY tier, as you call it, the tier, and then the collaboration tier. Is there any other tier that you wanted to talk about?
There is another tier above the collaborative, which is called ELO certificate. And what that is it's a much more intensive coaching on top of the program. So you still get all of the content that we've already discussed, the course content, you get those live Zoom calls with the experts. But what you also get is mentoring, one on one mentoring coaching. And you can select an experienced oncology pharmacist to mentor you. So my pool, if you will, of contractors of experienced oncology pharmacists, that some of them have raised their hand and say they're interested in doing one-on-one coaching. So you can you can select from a group of pharmacists that you would want to be your coach throughout this program. And it's meant to hold you more accountable to get through the course content. It's to help you create a portfolio of work. So there's a little bit of added layer of information, like doing journal clubs, kind of putting together a presentation, more like you would do during an actual residency program, doing more of that broad, full spectrum care rather than just the course content. So that's definitely for people who are, definitely in it and really want to maximize their potential of learning during this year.
No matter which tier your students choose, they can get through it in 8 months, right? And then they have the 4 month grace period during their annual membership fee to go back and learn other things, right?
Yeah, the course content takes 8 months to go through. Now, if you are a fast runner, you could, in theory, get through some of this content faster. But, as I've thought about how to get through all of this and kind of how you fit it into your life, it's definitely not a quick turnaround type of online course where you can learn something, in just a couple weeks of time. Oncology, we've got 24 topics, but there's even some of them are combined with smaller diseases. So this program, honestly, Kim, could have been 2 years long with how much content is out there. But I really tried to make it as the most important information and condense it in the best way possible. But there's always another level of getting into detail once you get the solid foundation.
There are a lot of pharmacists out there looking to do something else. And say there's somebody who has quit their job because they're sick of, for example, community pharmacy. They're sick of working for a large chain and being a number. They have decided they want to try oncology pharmacy. Is this a good option for them?
It is not initially, and I'll tell you why. Because this job or this program is not there to help you get a job. It's not a career coaching program. It's to help you develop the knowledge to be the most effective and efficient oncology pharmacist. So most of my clients are working in oncology in some capacity already. Now, I do have a lot of pharmacists reaching out to me about how to get their foot in the door in oncology. And I actually wrote a blog article with some tips about this because I get the question so often. This right now, this time we're in, which as we're recording this, it's summer of 2022, this is the best time to pivot into oncology. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is because cancer centers are rapidly expanding. We have a lot more cancer survivors because we're getting better at treating cancer, which means we have more patient appointments coming in, lots more patients to see on an ongoing basis. There are more drugs than ever being approved in oncology. And they're not just, run of the mill drugs. They're really complicated drugs like cellular therapy, CAR T therapies. So they require a lot of information upfront, a lot of in services of staff, a lot of monitoring parameters. So that's a reason why there's an increased need for oncology pharmacists. But in addition, we have a problem, which we're seeing in other areas of pharmacy too, but particularly in oncology pharmacy, is that a lot of our experienced clinicians are leaving patient care and going to work in non traditional roles, particularly for pharma. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We've actually just chatted about this at the ATOP Summit a couple weeks ago, and there's lots more to dig in there. But what that means is that there's a lot of centers that are hiring for oncology pharmacists, and a lot of directors and supervisors are realizing that they can't get enough staff who already have some oncology experience. So they are willing to train some. And I actually have worked with an institution who is purchasing my program for multiple of their new staff pharmacists to help them develop this baseline education because they're not coming in with a lot of experience. So this is the best time to get your foot in the door, but it still takes a lot of legwork from the pharmacist perspective to do your research, find out what centers are around you, raise your hand, and start thinking about what would it take for you to learn this material, and how can you communicate your investment in this to somebody who's looking to hire somebody that may or may not have experience. Because if you're coming in with no experience, you got to remember that the cancer center needs a job done at the end of the day. So they can't, your learning curve has to be pretty a quick start because they need to take care of patients, especially at the larger
Mhm.
centers that have a lot of volume. So I think, having going into the interview process with a plan of how you can develop your knowledge. Say, hey, I found Kelley's program over here that I think is a great way to help me develop. Um, but trying to think through how you can be most effective when you're not coming in with experience is something to consider when you're looking for these roles. But it's a great time to be an oncology pharmacist, so I would encourage everybody to look into what is around you.
That definitely answers my question. Kelley, I don't mean to be negative when I brought up a pharmacist switching jobs and they just want to maybe take your class in order to become an oncology pharmacist. I think that sometimes people have that misconception, though, that, oh, if I just take this class, I'll be qualified to go out and get a job as an oncology pharmacist. What I just heard you say is more like get the job first, get your feet wet, and then think about how you can personally develop yourself to be the best oncology pharmacist you can be. Is that right?
Yes, I would agree with that. And another reason to go that route is because having some real world experience in the day to apply this information means it's going to stick in your head a heck of a lot more than you're trying to read about carboplatin and paclitaxel and their hypersensitivity reactions, but you've never seen those drugs dispensed or seen a hypersensitivity reaction. It's going to be easier for you to retain the information when you're using it in your job.
It reminds me so much of learning how to play the piano. We had these two books. One was the theory book and one was the practice book. So in theory, you know what a quarter note and a half note and a rest are and all that good stuff. And but when you go to the piano and you actually practice, it's a little bit different, right?
So true. Yes.
Yes. Well, for anybody that's listening to this and thinking about entering oncology pharmacy, I think you have dropped a huge knowledge bomb and that will be of great value. So thank you for explaining what you think, the logical progression is. Don't take the course, then get the job, then take the course, right?
Yes, yes. And I have talked with somebody recently. I'll just share this kind of model as well. Is as you're interviewing, again, as I said, there's a lot of opportunity in oncology pharmacy. So, how can you leverage that? There are employers that are willing to pay for my course for their staff. So, if you're in a position where somebody is going to hire you into a role, you might be able to work the cost of my program into your package.
Advocate for yourselves, people.
That's right.
Absolutely. No, that's a good idea. And speaking of, who's going to pay for this, I would rather have my employer pay for it than have to pay for it myself because I'm sure it costs more than 99 cents, right? How much does your course cost?
It does. The DIY version of my program, so a 1 year membership to the course content, is $2,200. The ELO Collaborative is $4,000. And again, that's where you get access to those 24 expert oncology pharmacists. So that's why the price difference there. And they both do have payment options.
Okay. And the mentorship one?
The mentorship one is $11,500. And that's the one, again, where you get that one on one coaching support. So, something to think about when you're looking at a program like this, like, as you said, this is not a 99-cent online course for sure. But when you think about the grand picture of how other people get into oncology, like the residency training path, for example. So that's how I got into oncology. 2 years I worked at a resident salary versus a pharmacist salary. So in theory, if you do kind of basic number math, 2 years of residency training to get into oncology essentially costs you about $100,000. If you're making, say, 40,000 as a resident versus 100,000 as a pharmacist, you're making a huge investment in that training. So
Hmm.
this type of program is not the exact same as residency training, obviously, but it's, if you think about the value of developing this knowledge that you can leverage in lots of different ways, lots of different jobs. Oncology is not going anywhere. There are tons of patient care jobs. There's actually a lot of non-traditional jobs as well, both in pharma and in other roles like technology, product development, et cetera. So there's a big return on investment here for developing this knowledge for the rest of your career.
Thank you for sharing that. When someone makes an investment that's more than 99 cents, is there really a 99-cent course? I was just making that up. When people make that investment, though, they're investing in themselves. And thank you for kind of justifying that. You gave an excellent example, and thank you.
Investing in yourself is the best investment you can make, right? I think when I was in practice and I relied a lot on my employer to essentially tell me what I should do for my own professional development. They would pay for me to go to a conference if I was presenting a poster. And then I wouldn't go to a conference if it wasn't being paid for by my employer. And now looking back on that, that was not a very smart move for my own professional development because it means my employer got to choose what I was spending my time on and what resources I was accessing. And I should be choosing that. This is my career. I want to be in charge of what I'm learning and where I can go in the future. So that means I need to invest my money, my resources, my time in the path that I want to walk down, not what somebody else tells me to walk down.
I like that. I like that. You go, Kelley. I'm not an oncology pharmacist, you know that. But do oncology pharmacists like their jobs? We always hear about community practice being burned out and certain other people too, but how are the oncology pharmacists doing these days, really?
There is definitely burnout in oncology pharmacy, but oncology pharmacists do really love their jobs. And everybody I've talked to, even those that have left patient care, they say the direct patient care roles are the most rewarding roles. And I get questions a lot about, how can you work in oncology? Isn't it depressing? And my answer to that is no, it's actually the opposite. And that is because you're helping patients at the most difficult time in their life, arguably, right? They've got a cancer diagnosis. Depending on what type of cancer, maybe they're going to get treatment and they'll kind of move on and be cured and go back to their life. And maybe they won't. Maybe they're dealing with metastatic cancer and now have to deal with this the rest of their life. There is so much impact we can have, and not just from a pharmacologic perspective of managing toxicities, but a being present, bearing witness to patients going through this really difficult time in their life. It's so rewarding to do that. And looking back when I was in patient care, that was the biggest challenge for me leaving, was missing those patients. And to this day still, I miss taking direct care of patients. And I think oncology pharmacists across the board tell me that as well. Now, with that said, there's still the same kind of red tape and bureaucracy that we see in a lot of areas of healthcare and in pharmacy. It's the challenge of trying to do more with less and work more and do more. And pharmacy takes on lots of stuff because we're good at doing lots of stuff, and we like to be that consistent person on the team. So we're always raising our hand and sure, I'll do that thing for free, and you don't need to pay me more, or you don't need to give me a comp day. I'll just do it. We definitely need to get out of that mentality of just always saying yes. But in general, I think oncology pharmacists are very happy with their roles, definitely in patient care, but also in these newer non-traditional roles that are able to leverage this knowledge. There's lots of opportunity to expand what you're looking for if direct patient care isn't your jam, because some people like to be more behind the scenes. There's a lot of roles for oncology in informatics and technology, like I said, in pharma, and more MSL roles or medical information. Like, this knowledge will take you far.
Hey, that's important to know because if somebody is looking to make a career change, they think they want to be in oncology. Hearing from an oncology pharmacist how much she loves her job, Kelley Carlstrom loves her job, and she misses those patients, that's encouraging to hear because I'm not an oncology pharmacist, and I think only an oncology pharmacist can tell you, hey, if you're interested in this, I think you're going to love it.
If oncology is your jam and you really are interested in it, it is what you'll do the rest of your career. Like, there's no way I'm changing to something else. Oncology is my jam.
Kelley, let me go in a different direction with this conversation here. There is a lot of learning involved during your course. Is there any continuing education offered?
Great question. This is something that I get asked a lot, and there is not. I don't do CE accreditation. And there's two reasons for that. One is because I've actually worked on the CE side of our profession. I did some part-time work for a CE company for several years, so I'm well versed in all the hoops. And there are many hoops for those listeners who know some of the behind the scenes of CE. But the main reason is because of those hoops and how I have to update my program. Oncology changes all the time. So I need the flexibility to be able to jump into the course content and make a change when a drug is approved, or when a drug is pulled from the market, or when a new study comes out. And when you go through the CE route, there's a lot more restrictions in tasks like that. And my course constantly gets updated.
That's a positive thing that it gets updated. But for those seeking CE, of course, that's a negative thing. But, if you know about it going into it, then buyer beware. It is what it is. Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's not bad. Now, are there any certificates or anything that you offer upon completion?
There is a certificate for that highest tier with the coaching, the ELO certificate program. I think you definitely can put this program on your CV, and you can talk about it in job interviews, and when you're potentially up for a promotion at work. Because if we step back from a professional development perspective, and what our institutions and what our direct supervisors and managers want from us, they want us to be in charge of our development. They don't have the time or the inclination to kind of rope everybody in, and are you doing your CE right? They don't micromanage every CE. They just make sure that you're licensed at the end of the year. And so when you show that you're putting your own foot forward, you're taking proactive steps to develop your knowledge, that is absolutely going to look well both to your current supervisors, but also if you're looking for a job change. If you can talk about, hey, I invested in this training program, not just money, I invested my time in this training program to develop my knowledge because I know it's important in my professional trajectory. So that's why you can absolutely put it on your CV and talk about it in situations like that, like a potential interview.
That's a great point. Yeah. It sets somebody apart.
Hmm.
Is there anything that you do to help prepare people for any other certificates? Maybe you don't offer certificates for all your tiers, but does it help people prepare for other certificates?
Absolutely. A lot of my clients have a goal of taking the BCOP exam, the Board Certified Oncology Pharmacist exam. So that's the BPS oncology specific exam. And yes, this program can absolutely help you prepare for it, both with the weekly content, those 24 weekly lessons. But in addition, I have a question bank, a quiz question bank, because as I mentioned earlier, I created this program the way that I learn. It's a selfish way to do it, but this is how my brain thinks. And my brain works really well with practice cases and practice questions. So I have this question bank. It's got more than 200 questions on all the different diseases that are covered in the program. And they're multiple choice, just like the BCOP exam. And they also have an answer explanation. So once you pick an answer, it'll tell you why the answer is correct or not. And these
Awesome.
are all crafted by those expert pharmacists that are working in direct patient care. So we've got lots of experienced board certified pharmacists themselves reviewing these questions and creating new questions all the time. So if you're in one of those three tiers, you already get access to this question bank. But if you're just looking to go through a question bank in preparation for your upcoming BCOP exam, I do sell the question bank as a separate standalone offer as well.
Is that also on your website, KelleyCPharmD?
It will be. It is not currently on there, but if you join
Okay.
my email list, I email out every 2 weeks an email newsletter with oncology tips and insights. And at the bottom of every email, it has a link to resources that I offer, and it is in there. But it will soon be on my website.
Okay. Well, by the time this is published in late August, maybe it'll be there. Awesome. Well, I like that you have a newsletter. For anybody that's interested in joining your newsletter, what else can they find in there?
Yes, every week I've structured the newsletter in the three sections. I call it my IPS, because who doesn't love an acronym? And so IP stands for Insights, Pearls, and Sundry. And so insights is like some insight into the oncology world. It can mean a lot of different things, kind of what's going on in the world at that time. Pearls is a classic clinical or operational pearl. It's usually pulled from the course content we're going through that week, since that's kind of top of mind for me as I'm writing these newsletters. And then sundry is anything that comes to mind. It's a miscellaneous section. So sometimes maybe it'll be when this podcast rolls out, I'll pop the link in that sundry section of the newsletter. Maybe it's an interesting job opportunity I came across. It's really just, based on what's going on in the world. So I send out that email newsletter every 2 weeks, and I get a lot of great feedback that people really enjoy the format.
Very good. And they can get used to you and your personality and all the things that you offer and talk about, even if they haven't taken the online course. That's cool.
Absolutely. You'll see my use of emojis. I do love emojis.
I think I saw something about that on your website. You love coffee, emojis, and something else. I
And
can't remember.
cheese.
And cheese. Awesome. Being from Ohio, I have been to Amish country. They have a lot of cheese down in Amish country. So
Yes,
if you make it down there, yeah. Have you been down to Amish country
I
in
have.
Ohio?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, yes, it's great for cheese lovers. Heine's, in fact, is my favorite place in Amish country. I can't remember if that's Millersburg or Berlin or one of those other little towns, Millersburg. Anyways, Amish country's awesome. And I also love cheese, but I don't eat as much of it as I used to as I get older. All right, Kelley. Well, that's awesome. Now, as we start to wrap this up, I just want to ask you, are there any myths or misconceptions that you'd like to share about your course? Maybe somebody thinks they can do something with your course, but really it's a misconception. What do you have?
I think people have a misconception that you have to get through all of the content in the order that it's listed. I think pharmacists love this kind of this is strict pathway mentality of just like, give me a list of things to do and I'll go through it. And life needs a little bit more flexibility than that. So for some of my clients that are maybe not in a direct patient facing role, somebody maybe in a managed care role that works with oncology, or maybe an informatics role, they might have a different lens to learn this information. So maybe they don't need all of the background information. Maybe they want to focus just on the treatment information. What drugs do we use? What regimens do we use? You can bounce around and kind of pick and choose what's in the program. I've structured it for those people that are newer to oncology to give them that background, because that's what has been lacking. When you're reading online or you're reading like BCOP study materials that are out there, they don't give you that background information because they're assuming you have some baseline knowledge. So this is starting at the beginning for those people, but you can pick and choose what you need, where are your gaps in knowledge, and use that as a jumping off point.
Great point. Great point. Kelley, can you think of any reasons why anyone should not take your course?
I think it's to the point that we talked about earlier, that if you are taking it to get a job in oncology, I think I would caution you that you should look for an opportunity first, because again, it's gonna be easier to learn this information while you are working on the job.
Excellent point. Yes, thanks for reiterating that. Now, as we wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I just want to share that I love supporting oncology pharmacists. And I think that people that follow me on LinkedIn or get my newsletters, they probably hear me say this a lot, but oncology is the best specialty for pharmacists. I think hands down. Of course, I'm a little biased, but as I talked about, there's so many great opportunities in oncology, and a lot of pharmacists get put off or scared about the learning curve. And it's definitely a steep learning curve. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still learning it. I'm a decade in. I learn stuff all the time. It's not a learn it and be done. This is an ongoing learning adventure. I say a lot, it's a marathon to learn oncology, and it's actually a never-ending marathon. You will continue to run this marathon for the rest of your career. And I hope that's not scary, because there's so much great value to be had. There's so much value you can bring to taking care of your patients. And that's why I'm so passionate about supporting these pharmacists, because our patients deserve access to an experienced oncology pharmacist on their team.
Well said. And it sounds like it's a marathon you enjoy running, right?
It's the only marathon I enjoy running. I do not enjoy running in general.
KelleyCPharmD, not a runner. Got it. Well, thank you for the important work you do. And I really enjoyed hearing how you use your voice as a pharmacist who's in the education space in the form of your online courses. When I think of oncology, you are the pharmacist I think of. So thank you for the important work that you do and all the mentoring you do to the next generation. Congratulations on this online course. I hope you have a great rest of your summer, Kelley.
Thanks so much, Kim. I enjoyed my time chatting with you today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'll see you in Cincinnati at Metapreneurs. All right, bye.
All right, bye, Kim.